All right, I got a couple minutes past 4:30. We're going to get started. Welcome to the 2022 version of, I guess we're going to call it our Love and Accountability Tour this year instead of, I think last year was Learn, Grow, and Lead. So just to let everybody know where I'm at, I'm coming to you from the CCC training room. We do have a good crowd in here of Amy. And Amy's going to be the designated question answerer today. Does that work? All right. So what we're going to talk about real quick, what we're going to be doing this year, it's going to be slightly different than last year, but something that is important as we go through education, learning, and training year to year is the reinforcement. I think we do a pretty good job often on upfront training, but sometimes we don't do a good job year to year of reinforcement training. Great. So my presentation isn't going forward. All right, there we go. So what we're going to do this year is alternate months. The first month, we're going to be doing some reinforcement and review of the leadership sessions we did in 2021. And then March, we're going to switch to start some discussions on some WOW experience books. They're going to be a little bit shorter, maybe. Some of them are shorter than the books we had last year, but then we're going to alternate those subjects going forward. So February is going to be reinforcement of the leadership sessions. March will be books. Then April, we'll switch back to doing some review of the leadership sessions that we did last year. So today, with that said, we're going to do a quick review of maybe the first two sessions that I did last year or close to it. Now, I like this question. This is a question that you often hear asked is, are leaders born or can they be developed? Amy, are leaders born or can they be developed? So apparently we completely failed at our leadership training last year, or Amy wasn't paying attention. So we can be born with certain traits that may help someone more easily become a better leader, but generally speaking, leaders are developed over time. They are not born, they are developed over time. Now, so I had something interesting happen, I don't know, last year. We had somebody leave here in the middle of the year. In their exit interview, they flat out told me I don't understand why we're doing that leadership training. Either you're a leader or you're not. So I said, okay, thank you. Good luck. But that statement kind of maybe told me a little bit about why that individual wasn't so successful here. But that was a stunning statement to hear from somebody that worked here for a pretty long time. So I can't stress enough that, again, that statement that's up there, we can be born with certain traits that may help someone more easily become a better leader. But leaders are developed over time. So leaders are developed. They don't just spring out of the womb, you know, as a leader. It just doesn't, that's just not the way it works. Might be easier if that happened, but that's not the way it works. So what is leadership? So defined by Webster is the office or position of a leader, a capacity to lead. Okay, what does that mean? So lead means to guide on a way, especially by going in advance, to direct on a course or in a direction, to direct the operations, activity, or performance of, to have charge of. So that's the clinical definition, what it means to lead. Some of my favorite synonyms for lead: coach, shepherd, mentor, show, counsel, guide, precede, and that means going out in front. We could spend some time talking about 43 feet out front, but that's for another subject. So again, coach, shepherd, mentor, show, counsel, guide, precede, among others. So I like this question too. What type of person or who do you think of when you think of someone who is a leader? So what comes to mind? Okay, that's one, maybe the best. I would argue that. About George Washington, military leaders. That's what I would think most of the time, not everyone, but most people probably go to military first when they think of leaders. Abraham Lincoln, maybe. Political leaders. All right, remember, we're not talking necessarily at this point in the discussion, we're not talking about good or virtuous leaders. Okay, we're talking about leaders. Martin Luther King Jr., Alexander the Great, Winston Churchill, Joan of Arc, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, King David, St. Paul, Genghis Khan, Napoleon Bonaparte. What defines a leader? So, I mean, I came up with that list just by when I originally did this. I just sat down and off the top of my head, what do I think of personally when I think of leaders? Again, let me be clear, not necessarily what we might define as good and virtuous leaders, but leaders nonetheless. So what defines a leader? What are some of the traits of great leaders or things they do consistently? Serve, I heard that here in the room. Being authentic. Initiative. Are you looking at last year's notes? Dang. All right. Set example by actions, behavior, initiative. They take action. They listen. They're consistent with their behavior. Empathetic, always learning. If I had put these in any type of order of what I think is most important, empathetic might have been first, showing empathy, maybe in humility. I think humility is on this list as well, but I don't think you can be a great leader without being empathetic toward those around you. Having integrity, inspiring others, having vision, being able to articulate that vision, being able to persuade, having discipline. You know, using the word persuade there, not force or coerce or having self-awareness, being enthusiastic. Self-awareness is an interesting phrase and topic. In fact, we could probably have a half-day discussion about self-awareness or lack of self-awareness. I've spent the better part of my life with pretty big lack of self-awareness. Being accountable, persistence, being humble, having humility, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on, but these are, again, now this list did not just come off the top of my head like that previous list of individuals or people that I think of when I think of leaders. This actually, this list came from books I've read, leadership studies that I've gone through. So this was actually had a little bit of research on this particular list. So we're going to get into some specifics here. And this, again, this goes back to last February. What skills are required for an effective leader to move a group or organization toward advantage? So what do I mean when I say move a group or organization toward advantage? Being better, moving toward a mission that we have, moving toward a vision that we have. So hopefully any type of training, anything you're studying, training, reading, learning, hopefully if it's related to leadership or skills for your vocation or being a better husband, wife, mother, father, friend, whatever, being a better community servant, all those things are hopefully going to be moving you, or things that you're studying is going to move you toward advantage within whatever area that you're trying to improve or be better at. First is vision. So all leaders have a vision and project a way to get there. All leaders have a vision and project a way to get there. Let's look from here, Eric. Articulation. I mentioned these two were in that list, but articulation. So the second piece is they have a vision And the best leaders are willing and able to clearly articulate their vision in a way that can be easily understood and remembered. The best leaders are willing and able to clearly articulate their vision in a way that can be easily understood and remembered. When you see it, when I see it written like that, that looks so simple. But being able to articulate that where it's simple and not be easily understood, sounds simple, but it's not easy. It's not as easy as it sounds. But again, great leaders are able to do that. Persuasion, this was on that list earlier. The next level leader is able to persuade others to follow him or her in their vision. So again, persuasion is sometimes the word that can be grouped in a negative category. But again, we're not talking about, we're talking about persuasion, not coercion or forcing or pushing something on a group or an organization. It's been able to get, persuasion means getting that group or organization to believe in that vision. Last is initiative. Best leaders initiate action without having to be told by others what is necessary. That's one of the reasons the first book we studied last year was the Dog Poop Initiative, right? That's about taking initiative without somebody having to tell that dad what to do. It could just been he just wanted to keep his kids' shoes clean. Sometimes it's not as complicated as we think. All right. Here's where we're getting to the real meat of the difference between really great leadership and just general leadership. It isn't enough that a leader be effective. He or she must also be virtuous. There are plenty of historical examples of effective leaders who were not virtuous. This led to some of the greatest disasters in world history. So earlier, when I don't know if y'all could hear it on virtually, but when I was talking about that list of leaders, one I didn't put up there, but somebody here in the room said Hitler. If you study history, it would be hard to argue that Hitler wasn't an effective leader, unfortunately. But he sure wasn't virtuous. So that's one example, but there's other examples. You could argue maybe, somebody like Genghis Khan or some of these conquerors, they were obviously effective leaders, but they weren't necessarily virtuous as a whole. I mean, they were, but again, they had a large group of individuals who were following them, so they were obviously effective within their group. So that's why you got to have the second piece when you're talking about great leadership. It's just not those traits that we talked about earlier. You really need to have the second piece of this. So virtuous would be moral and ethical. The vision and the mission that you're trying to accomplish is a moral and ethical, not event, but the ultimate purpose is moral and ethical. Good question. The question was, you guys on Zoom didn't hear that. Dave asked, can you give a definition of what virtuous is? And now I think this will help expand on that, Dave, to help understand this better. So a great leader must have the leadership virtues that comprise the 5 habits and ethics of moral excellence that enable an individual to be who a true leader is. All right, so these are 5 habits that help take us to that a more virtuous leader. All right, first is candor. First, he or she must have candor, which is the habit of graciously. Let me say that again, graciously telling the hard truth and demanding to hear it from others. All right, this kind of goes to our theme for the year, love and accountability. A great leadership and very highly successful organizations and individuals in those organizations are able to have candor. Not only, I like this phrase in here that says they demand the hard truth and they demand to hear it from others. If within our organization and even in the smaller groups within our company, the smaller division or the smaller work groups, if we can't be candid with each other and share the truth graciously, it will be very hard for us to move forward. That's why candor's first. Be very difficult. Now, what that requires is having the humility to hear it, that hard truth, because sometimes that hard truth might be directed to you, and have the empathy to be able to give out that hard truth. That's why I believe empathy and humility are the two most important traits for a virtuous leader. Second is commitment. Second, he or she must have commitment, which is unwavering loyalty to the group and unflinching determination to accomplish its mission. Once we decide on this is the mission, we can't waver from it. Got to be committed. Committed in the sense that we want to accomplish something positive, not committed that you need to be committed to an insane asylum. Right, Amy? Are you doing emails or are you listening? Oh, okay. Next is consistency. Consistency. Third, he or she must be consistent in that he or she is unchanging in nature, standard, or effect over time. All right, so good leaders, you have to know what to expect day to day. And doesn't mean, good leaders and great leaders don't have that occasional, I don't know, hiccup, but in general, day to day, the teams, organizations, the leaders of great organizations have got to be consistent. You have to know what to expect pretty much every single day. Maybe not every single interaction exactly the same, but on a day-to-day in general basis, there's got to be consistency in actions and behavior and holding standards. And, I'm sure when I set this up, I think you could see the core values behind me. There's got to be consistency on holding the standards and the behaviors of leaders. If we say these are the core values we're going to live by, the leaders have to live by those core values. Contentment. This is a strange word, because I think the first thing we think of when we think of being contented is slightly different, but he or she must possess contentment, which is the stability of emotion. So controlling emotions engendered by the consistent pursuit of joy rather than happiness. So I like this discussion because we can talk about joy and happiness. So to me, happiness is what I would call short term. It's, this morning it was cold and rainy. So you want to go by, get your hot chocolate and your s'mores and go sit by the fire. Okay. That's happiness for a few minutes anyway. Then the hot chocolate is cold, the s'mores are gone, and the fire's out. All right. So joy is more of what I would call the pursuit of that contentment, because you're comfortable with where you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish each day. It's a longer term just outlook on life, as opposed to that short-term joy. Short-term happiness that you get from short-term events and interactions. And last is courage. And this one, I shortened the other descriptions, but I didn't shorten this one from the presentation last year. I might read this one twice. He or she must be a person with courage, which is the habit of setting aside fear to turn hardship into grace. While a leader may be effective by pretending fear does not exist, at least in him, the virtuous leader accepts fear as the natural and necessary human emotion that it is and overcomes it through self-control and being prepared. All right, so I will admit this particular sentence, I stole this from a leadership study that my F3 group does, and this is written by a lawyer, if you can imagine. That's why it's a little wordy, but I didn't want to take any of the words out, because I just felt this paragraph really lays out what courage is. Some people believe that courage is the absence of fear. For me, courage is being afraid and doing it anyway. I don't think there's any such thing that there's ever been anybody who wasn't afraid of something or some situation, or a lot of times though, worry is that fear we have, but it's stuff that never happens anyway. So I'm gonna read this one again. Courage is the habit of setting aside fear to turn hardship into grace. I think for the last 22 or 23 months, that phrase right there hits home for me anyway. While a leader may be effective by pretending fear does not exist, the virtuous leader accepts fear as a natural and necessary human emotion that it is, and still overcomes it through self-control and being prepared. Effective and virtuous leaders show courage by doing the hard and important things. As a leader, if you guys remember this from last year, how do you know something is important to do? As a leader, how do you know something is important to do? By the level of how badly you want to avoid it. And I think that is absolutely true. Yeah. How many, Donna just mentioned eating the frog. How do you eat the frog? It's, one bite at a time. Or how you eat the elephant is one bite at a time. How do you actually kill the frog is you slowly turn the water up, and you, instead of dropping them in boiling water, you just put them in the pot and then slowly turn the water up. So that's how badly you want to avoid something. So how badly do you want to avoid that candid conversation you need to have with somebody? Whether it's a family member, whether it's somebody you work with, whether it's somebody in the community. The more anxiety you have over it, it's probably telling you that it's telling you how important that it is. As Homer Simpson would like to say, can't somebody else just do it? How you feel on some mornings? Look outside, it's cold, it's wet, bed's awful warm. Let's stay here for a while. All right, so how do they do this? How do these virtuous leaders do this? This is super important. One conversation or interaction at a time. One conversation or interaction at a time. This one I can't stress enough, because we think great leadership happens in one grand, gigantic, asteroid hitting the earth and everything's going to be, it's not, it doesn't happen in some grand, great event and everything's great. It happens slowly over time, and it's always about relationships and interactions with individuals. Okay, one interaction at a time. This is the same slide I shared last year, because this is one of my favorite quotes about leadership from Orrin Woodward. Average leaders raise the bar on themselves. Good leaders raise the bar for others. Great leaders inspire others to raise their own bar. So inspiration, inspiring others was one of those traits that was in an earlier slide. So take that one. Again, this one of my favorite. There's a lot of terrific quotes on leadership. This is one that really struck me when I first saw it, and kind of describes what we're trying to accomplish with our leadership here at GSM. All right, so just as a reminder, these are the 4 books that we studied last year on leadership. We had the Dog Poop Initiative, the Energy Bus, the Way of the Shepherd, and the Power of Positive Teams. So I'll bring these up so that we have anybody that's on here who maybe missed some of those early ones, or does not have one of these books and would like a copy. It's been recently gone through orientation. We are giving out the Dog Poop Initiative orientation now, have been for the last few months. But again, let us know, let myself or Amy or Beverly, someone know, and we'll make sure to get you a copy, because we are going to touch on these every other month as we go through the year, just maybe not quite in as much detail as we did before. So here's the WOW Experience books we're going to go through in 2022, and I think we've already got them. We may have all of them already, but in the next week or so, we'll get these books out to you, because again, we're not going to start these until March. But the first one is a book called Raving Fans by Ken Blanchard. Second one is a $6,000 Egg. Third is The How of WOW, and the last is The Simple Truths of Service. Now, some of these books, I know some of our team members have already read them, and that's great. I would encourage you to read them again, or if you already have a copy, that's great. Just let us know, and so we can get them to somebody else. But again, Raving Fans is the first one we're going to give out to you. And again, we'll get these out to the team leaders this week. And so you can have those to start reading. Again, these are all relatively short reads, but I think they're all powerful books. Again, we're not going to get away from leadership completely, but we are going to intermingle the leadership study in the WOW experience in customer service based books for 2022. All right, next session is going to be Monday, February 21st. Nothing that I'm going to do, at least after my session, and unless it's an issue, because Amy was telling me it's not a good idea, is I'm going to include a copy of the PowerPoint presentation each week when Amy sends out or when we send out, I'm not sure who's going to send it out, but we send out the recap. So anybody that missed it can watch the video. You can have the PowerPoint slides for review. So here in the big room, anybody got any questions or comments? I got almost 5 o'clock. We're going to try to keep these to 30 to 35 minutes this year, like we did last year. I think the first few were a little longer last year, but we're going to try to get everybody out of here by 5. And when will this recap be sent out, Miss Anderson or Miss King? Tomorrow? All right, we'll have the recap sent out tomorrow for everybody. So look at this chat, make sure I don't have any questions here. All right, nope. All right, well, guys, I appreciate your time. Thank you. We're going to continue this throughout the rest of the year, and please give us any feedback or have any questions, let us know.